How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to On The Ball. Welcome back to another review of the Premier League. Obviously, me and Sim have a scoring system when we do our predictions prior. It's 328 to Sim, 327 to me. And the way the scoring works, if you don't know by now, it's 5 points for a completely correct scoreline, 1 point for a correct result. And the star man, once you pick that man, you can't pick them again for the rest of the season. 5 points for a goal, 2 points for an assist. A very short weekend in the Premier League this weekend with FA Cup going on. Only 4 games to get through. We'll start off with Burnley against Brentford. It finished 2-1 to Burnley on the day, which is a massive 3 points for them. Both of us went for Brentford wins. Sim went for 2-0. I went for 3-1. And you never know, it could have gone. One of us could have got a 5 pointer if Reguilon didn't do what he did after 9 minutes in. I mean, do you think it was a penalty? I thought it was a nailed-on one.
Yeah, and I think VAR was right to get involved, and I do think it was a red card because I think it was a cynical challenge from Reguilon. I'm not sure how the referee didn't pick it up at the time when the foul happened, but obviously VAR, this is one of the good uses of VAR, I'd say. People don't usually praise VAR when they get things right, and they definitely did get this one right.
Credit where credit's due, eh?
Exactly, because we bash it enough, so fair play to VAR in that situation. And that really was beneficial to Burnley getting all 3 points in this game, because I felt like obviously Burnley played really well against 10 men. Larson scores the penalty, and then Fofana makes it 2-0 in the second half. But Brentford had a lot of chances in those final 20 minutes. Yeah. Ivan Toney missed a really gilt-edged chance from a corner. Obviously, Aya gets them back in the game, and after that moment, Burnley were really under the cosh, and obviously they ground out the win in the end. They'll feel like they deserve the victory. I think they probably did on the balance of play, but definitely watching the game, you felt like if Brentford had that extra man, that would have made all the difference, and that red card really hurt them, and that was probably what cost them the game. But credit to Burnley, they got the win in the end. Just about, I mean, given Luton and Forest's result, which we'll talk about in a minute, it keeps them 8 points behind 7 teams. So still a long way to go if they're going to claw their way back in the relegation fight. But at least a win, keeps them somewhat in there, as opposed to being completely dead before the weekend.
Yeah, for me, I thought Burnley very much deserved all 3 points in this game. I think they were, for the majority of the game, for about 70 minutes of the game, they were the better side. Fofana missed well, what a gilt-edged chance he misses. You're talking about misses of the season. There's 2 of them only in this weekend alone, with Fofana and Timo Werner, which we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, look, Brentford did make a late rally, but unfortunately, it was just a little too late for Brentford, and I think Burnley take home the 3 points, deservedly so, and it's a massive 3 points for them. 17 points they're on. Forest in 17th on 25 points. People are saying they're probably still dead and buried, but maybe if they do get a couple more unexpected wins, they can make a late rally to save themselves.
Yeah, who knows? They're going to have to go on some serious run. They're going to go on like some sort of Champions League title winning run if they're going to save themselves from this point, because they're still so many points behind. But you have to say, like from Brentford's point of view, I thought this was going to be a game that they really started to claw their way out of trouble. I've been saying before that I thought Brentford have been playing well recently without really getting the results maybe their performances deserve. But when you're going away to Burnley and losing as comfortably as they did in the end, that's got to be a real big concern going into the latter stages of the season, when they're currently only 4 points clear of the relegation zone, and I think they've lost 8 of their last 10 games. I think if even stretching back further than that, they're in some seriously dire form at the moment. So even though their performances are maybe taking a bit of an uptick since Tony's come back, the results unfortunately haven't, and that's got to be a massive concern for Brentford. So this defeat would have really hit them hard. I think they're going to have to kind of get back in next week after international break, and after maybe the rest will do them good, that break, and they can kind of regroup after the international break. But they're in some really bad form, and they've got to be concerned by that, especially when they're facing a team like Burnley down the bottom, and they're still getting beaten.
Yeah, 100%. But I do think they only lost this game because of that red card in the early stages of the game. If you get a red card in the first 10 minutes, it's always going to be very hard, to try and do something in the game. They did make a late rally. They could have got back into the game, but this game is down to Reguilon, in my opinion. I think if Reguilon doesn't get sent off, I think they go on and win this game.
I get that, but when you're in such bad form, you can't really have those excuses, you know what I mean? Because they need to pick up points to make sure they're not getting dragged into that relegation battle. And they've been in terrible form results-wise, and they've got this opportunity against Burnley to claim some points. And yes, they did get the red card, but when you then lose that game as well, all of a sudden you start to think when is this good run coming results wise, and that's got to be a massive concern. So I do agree, and also big positive news for Brentford was Mbeumo came back off the bench yesterday on the weekend. Sorry. So look, I think they'll still be confident. They'll be okay, especially with Mbeumo now back. But their form has to turn around massively because their form is terrible, really, really bad.
I think even if they pick up like 2 or 3 wins from now until the end of the season, I think that'll be enough to keep them up. I really believe that. Like, I don't think Brentford are going to go down. Like, I think they're a much worse team. Even with the form that they're on, I think Forest are a worse team and they're showing it. Luton are a worse team. Burnley and Sheffield United are all worse teams than them. So I think, I genuinely think 3 wins should be enough for Brentford to stay up.
Yeah, well, they lost 8 of the last 10, so we'll see if they get those 3 wins. But I do agree.
Next up, we're going to go to another game down at the bottom, which was Luton against Nottingham Forest. It finished 1-1. Sim went for 2-1 to Luton. I went for 1-1. So a big fat 5-pointer coming my way for this one. And I think Nottingham Forest will be really hurt that they didn't win this game, because I felt like they were the better team for the majority of the game. Luton made a late rally, got a late equaliser, but Forest should have been clear by there.
Yeah, it was really impressive display by Forest in a big away game where Luton at home, we know that Luton needed to win this game to have the chance to claw themselves out of the relegation zone. And they would have been up for it, especially after that damaging defeat they had in midweek, being 3-0 up at half-time against Bournemouth and ending up losing. But they didn't approach this game with the confidence that I've seen them recently. And Forest played a really good counter-attacking game. I thought Elanga was causing all sorts of problems for Luton. Obviously, he assisted Chris Wood's goal, and they had some chances to be out of sight. To be fair, Luton were a constant threat from set pieces. I remember on the stroke of half-time, they scored a goal from, I think it was Clark, but it was ruled out through a handball. And then, so Forest got a bit of reprieve there. But Forest should have been out of sight before Luton equalised right at the death, and they'll be really annoyed at themselves that they missed a lot of gilt-edged chances. Morgan Gibbs-White was at the centre of a lot of those chances missed as well. Although I thought he had a very good game, he'll be annoyed he didn't get on the score sheet or at least get an assist on the day.
He got an assist, Gibbs-White.
So he assisted Wood at the end, but it was, or he should have done more because he had chances, although he had a very good game. So I thought Forest played really well under the circumstances, but they'll be kicking themselves they didn't get the win.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good display from Forest. I think they'll take encouragement from the display, but they'll be very downhearted that they didn't get all 3 points, because if they do get 3 points in this game, it puts daylight between them and Luton. And Luton just about did enough, I guess, by the end of the game to keep it really tight down there at the bottom. And I think, look, Forest are bang in trouble. I do think I look at it differently than I look with the Brentford thing, because I do think Brentford have enough quality in their team with the likes of Ivan Toney, Wissa and Mbeumo to claw themselves out of it and to get those 3 wins. But I'm not sure where those wins are coming from for Nottingham Forest.
I like their front line. I think they got a really good front line, to be honest. Like, in terms of the bottom half of the table, I think a lot of teams would kill to have the likes of Gibbs-White, Elanga, Awioni as well. So I think they've got enough quality in that front line to win games. It's just about whether Nuno's a good enough manager to get it out of them. At the moment, it's been very... it's not been a great tenure so far for Nuno. I don't think he's really taken them away from the relegation zone like they expected. I know under Steve Cooper, they were kind of going towards a relegation zone, but they weren't as bad, as much trouble as they are in now when Cooper took over. So I don't think Nuno's had the desired effect, albeit he's still got them in a position where they're looking like they should be safe. But the fact they didn't win keeps only a 3-point gap between Luton and Forest going to the last 9 games of the season there. So really very, very tight. One bad result and they could be slipping into the relegation zone. But Luton, from their point of view, I think the last 2 games would have been a big concern, because obviously midweek was a massive chance to get 3 points on the board, especially being 3-0 up, and they gave that away. And then at home to a relegation rival where you've really got to make most of those opportunities in those 6-pointer games. You've really got to come out on top, and the fact they could only muster a draw, and they were lucky to get a draw, has got to be concerning. So from Luton's point of view, they just got to hope that these last 2 games doesn't kill any of the momentum they've built through the rest of the season. They don't start to lose belief off the back of these 2 games.
And you're looking at Luton's fixtures now. 3 of their next 4, Tottenham, Arsenal, Man City.
Yeah, next should be 3 losses.
So, I mean, for me, it's looking like the writing's on the wall a little bit for Luton at the moment.
Yep, that's the worry when you've had these results they've had. They've had to take advantage of it and they didn't, and now they've got to really overachieve against some really tough teams and away from home as well, which is going to be very tough for them.
And then Forest, on the other hand, 2 of their last 2 games are against Sheffield United and Burnley. So if it is getting a bit hairy for Forest at the end, I do think they have the quality to go and beat those teams.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the relegation battle, I do think it's going to be the 3 promoted teams to go back down. I can't really see another way.
It's looking likely at the moment.
But look, let's go to the next one. London derby. Can we just skip this one, to be honest? Fulham beat Tottenham by 3-0. Both of us going for 2-1 to Spurs. And look, we've covered this game in depth on We Are Tottenham, but it was an embarrassment of a performance from Spurs after that miraculous performance against Aston Villa, heroic performance where we put in our best display of the season. We followed that up with our worst display of the season here at Craven Cottage. And you know, the tone was set after the first 10-15 minutes when Fulham really were carving us open like a hot knife through butter. Didn't get the goal. And Spurs kind of slowly crept into the game and started to create chances themselves. And then Fulham scored against the run of play just before the break. And then it kind of just spiraled from there, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was a bit of a disgrace of a second half from Tottenham's point of view. Really came out sluggish and conceded 2 fairly quick goals. Really didn't have a response to what Fulham were offering from an offensive point of view. You know, I think the narrative around Tottenham this season, going into the season, was always going to be, they're going to be so open and it's going to be gung-ho and they're not going to... There's going to be a lot of like basketball games. And I think this game was one of the examples of Tottenham being very open without having an answer going the other way. And the fact that we were so open being a massive hindrance. I don't think it's happened too often this season. But unfortunately, on this occasion, Fulham took full advantage of it. Marco Silva did a really good tactical job on Ange. And all the good work, unfortunately, from last week got undone a bit in this game. Thankfully, we'll talk about Villa later. They didn't take full advantage. But in terms of Tottenham going into the international break in the top 4 and building some serious momentum after a really great win last week, didn't happen. Albeit, what I would say is they had the chances to score. That the fact that they scored 0 goals wasn't because they didn't create anything. They had more than enough chances to score at least a couple of goals, but their finishing was really, really off at the day. So that'll be really disappointing from Ange's point of view. But when you're 3-0 down and you concede the chances we concede, you can't really complain when you get absolutely outdone, and that's what happened. So a big opportunity missed. I hope Tottenham doesn't let it affect them in the race for the top 4. I still put them as favourites, but unfortunately that defeat will be very damaging when it comes to the confidence we built from that Villa game. Yeah,
but you know, we were talking about Spurs last week being clear favourites for that top 4 after the Aston Villa game, but I see it very tight now in terms of who's going to get it, and it's anyone's game, to be honest. I think you're looking at Tottenham, you're looking at Aston Villa. That performance and that result at Fulham kind of knocks a bit of confidence out of me. And yes, Villa didn't get the job done against West Ham on the weekend, but it's going to be blow for blow now every week.
Yeah, we'll have to wait. Yeah, it looks like it. Looks like it at this rate.
West Ham against Aston Villa in the last game of the weekend. We both went for 2-2. It did finish 1-1, but this was the game of disallowed goals, really. West Ham had 3 disallowed goals on the day, 1 in the last minute. Before we get into the disallowed goals, the way the game went, I mean, Antonio's come back in firing form, scored to put West Ham ahead early in the game after half an hour. Villa got their equaliser with about 10 minutes to go. And that chance at the end with Thomas Souček disallowed for handball. I mean, I've looked at it about 5, 6, 7 times now, and I still can't see a handball.
I agree. I think it wasn't conclusive. I'm shocked that the VAR has decided to intervene when I don't know if there's conclusive evidence that there was an infringement from Souček there. And I think the same thing with the Antonio goal just in the second half as well, when that would have put West Ham 2-0 up. I've seen it a number of times. I think there's a good case to say that comes off his chest rather than his arm. But the VAR has decided there's conclusive evidence that he's brushed his arm or has touched his arm and gone into the net. To be fair, neither Antonio nor Souček at the time did seem to give massive pushback on the decision. So maybe they acknowledge themselves that they did touch the arm, but I'm just going off the back of the video evidence. And I think you can make a case for both arguments. I don't think there was conclusive evidence to definitively say both of them were handball, though. So if I'm a West Ham fan, I'm very, very annoyed and frustrated about those decisions. I thought West Ham deserved the win, to be honest, albeit Villa had lots of possession and they were obviously dominating the ball. I thought West Ham were countering really effectively and they created a number of really promising opportunities. And they'll be annoyed that they didn't score some in some of the defining moments where they had clear opportunities. I remember Ward-Prowse had one late in the game as well to make it 2-1, but it was a game of two halves,
really, though, wasn't it? I thought West Ham were by far the better team in the first half, and then Villa did come back into it second half.
They came back into it, but they had a lot of possession without doing much, to be honest. They didn't really create anything apart from the goal. The goal did come, it was a really well worked goal, to be honest. Tielemans plays a really good ball in behind to Diaby, who pulls it back for Zaniolo, and he finishes it off. And Villa will probably feel like it was reward for a lot of the good work they did in that second half. But I thought West Ham defended really well, and they did really restrict Villa from any serious opportunities, to be honest. They didn't feel like they had many clear-cut opportunities. So I think West Ham will feel like with the opportunities they created and the way they defended, they probably deserved the win. From Villa's point of view, they kept plugging away. They obviously dominated the ball heavily in that second half, and they never stopped trying to create chances, and then they ended up forcing equaliser and for a good goal as well. So they'll feel like they deserve the point at least. But I think from West Ham's point of view, you put into account the disallowed goals as well, which I thought they were hard done by. It was a really tough one to take, the fact that he didn't get the win.
And on that decision right at the end, I'll go back to it. Like, it takes 6 or 7 minutes to come to a decision. Surely if it takes that long and you're replaying it, keep looking for somewhere where, you know, you want to disallow it for, surely that's not clear and obvious, and surely like you can just move on and being like, look, let's just stick with the ref's on-field decision.
I agree. I don't think there was anywhere near enough conclusive evidence to suggest that it was a definite handball, and the fact that they had to kind of zoom in and it was grainy footlow, they got to like, it was like very pixelated, and you can't, I think the post was in the way as well of the incident, so you couldn't quite tell. I think they just assumed that maybe it hit Souček's arm because of the movement of the arm, and even though they didn't actually have direct their direct vision of the ball touching the arm, because of the direction of the arm and where the ball went, they could kind of deduce that Souček did touch it. But as I say, there wasn't conclusive evidence of that. So I think West Ham were really hard done by that moment. In terms of the race for the top four, Villa did kind of fail to take advantage of a really bad performance from Spurs. So
still gained a point on us, though, didn't they?
They gained a point, but they didn't take full advantage of it, because a point still leaves it in a similar situation. If Spurs win their game in hand, they'll go into top four. So it doesn't change the situation too much. Although who knows, maybe that point will make a big difference come the end of the season. But I think they will be disappointed having seen Tottenham lose like they did. They didn't come out with a point to prove, saying, you know, we're going to take charge of this top four race again. The fact that there was a pretty limp performance, they could have easily lost, was probably very disappointing from Aston Villa's point of view. But good performance from West Ham in the race for the top six. Obviously, not getting the win, but gaining a point on Man United in that race for top six, leaving them only 3 points behind, albeit United do have a game in hand.
You know, if we do win that game in hand, we will go above. We'll go above them most likely on goal difference, but the goal difference is literally neck and neck at the moment. They've scored 60, we've scored 59, they've let in 42, we've also let in 42. It's literally so tight, this top four race now, and it didn't need to be this tight, because Spurs should have put in a much better display against Fulham. And yeah, look, there's no guarantee we would have won the game, even if we did put in a better display, but we could have put ourselves a much better chance to go and, stamp that authority in the top four race. After that performance at Villa, much better performance at Crystal Palace, where we hardly conceded a chance, well, the floodgates just opened, didn't they, in terms of the defence and the midfield, just literally just opened like the Red Sea for Fulham on the weekend, which was a massive shame. But still a long way to go. For Spurs' point of view, there's 10 games to go. For Aston Villa's point of view, there's 9 games to go. And hard games for both sides. So I think it's anyone's, this top four now. But let's move on to the Star men. It was a Brentford head-to-head. And both of us got 0 points in Ivan Toney and Yohan Wissa. 0 goals, 0 assists. And
had chances.
Yeah, they both did have chances. I think Toney had about 3 shots on goal. Wissa had about 1 or 2 shots on goal on the day. But nothing doing so.
Thanks, Regulon.
Exactly. We have a new leader this week. Myself, 333 points. Sim is on 329. It's a bit of a break from Predict the Prem this because of the international break for a couple of weeks. So we'll see you all very soon. Thank you, everyone, for watching.